Hey guys, Chris from Provo Beast Audio Installation, and in today's video we're installing a 5-channel amplifier and subwoofer in this 2022 Hyundai Kona. Now in this install we're going to show you how to integrate this amp and sub to a factory audio sound system. Let's get started. Now before we dive into things, a couple of things to note. Our Kona does not have the Harman Kardon audio factory amplified sound system. If you do, your install will differ slightly because you do have a factory amp that you'll have to either integrate into or find a way to bypass. In our trim level, we do not have any sort of amplifier. The radio powers all the speakers, so that makes it a little bit more easy and straightforward for our install. Now, regardless of your trim, we'll make notes of your install in the description of this video. So without further ado, let's head to the bench to show the parts that we're going to need for the install. Now here at the bench, the parts that we're using in today's install, first and foremost is the amplifier that the customer has chosen to put in. It's this Kenwood Exelon 5-channel amp. It's the X802-5. Being a 5-channel amp, it'll power all our interior speakers and a output sub channel for a downfiring sub we're going to put in the trunk of this vehicle. Now, the subwoofer we're looking to install is a downfiring 12-inch L7 subwoofer and a kicker custom downfiring box. It's a great solution for this vehicle. To wire everything up here, we need a 4-gauge amplifier wiring kit. This is a 4-gauge OFC kit by Scar Audio. Comes with almost everything that we need for the install. We do need a little bit of speaker wiring. This is 9-conductor cable by Metra. This essentially is a 20-foot run and has all our speaker wire and remote turn-on wire all nicely bundled within this kit. Factory integration. This is a nice little optional upgrade. We're going with the Audio Control LC7i, and essentially here this will convert the factory signal, put out a nice signal for our amplifiers. Alternatively, our Kenwood amp does just have a high-level input, so you can use the high-level input harness instead of this audio control device. But what this will do is give us some a line driver, signal correction, some summing options, a ton of different features that just doing a simple high-level input will not provide. To tap into the factory audio sound system, being that we don't have a factory amplifier, Pac makes a great T-harness. This is the Pac Audio LPH-HY06. It's a T-harness which will allow us to essentially here rob the signal from the factory radio and send that to our amp, and then that amplified signal back up into the harness to all our speakers without the need of any manual cutting, wiring, or pulling new wire to each individual speaker. Let's go ahead and get everything pulled apart and start mocking up where our amplifier is going to go. Now we have found that this amplifier fits underneath the driver's side front seat pretty well, and so being that we've test fitted and removed the seat temporarily so we can have great access to wire up our amplifier, what we've done here is grabbed a piece of ABS plastic. This is a large 12 by 16 inch sheet, 10 inches here. It's a 10-inch wide and it's about 16 inches long. This is about 1/8 inch ABS plastic. We've mounted our amplifier to it. And our LC7i will kind of mount towards this side here. We have our factory vent that'll vent up and over the top here. So it's a really good solution for us to get this mounted in this position. So what we like to do here at the bench is try to wire as much of the amplifier at the bench as possible. And the benefit of doing that is we're not limited by the way we route the wire or anything like that. We can do it all here. We're not hunched over. Then we'll take everything to pull wire in the vehicle itself. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and get our amplifier wiring kit pulled apart. We're going to get our terminals all hooked up. We're going to grab our 9 wire, strip it back to expose all the wire inside of it here. We're going to get everything hooked up to these terminals as well and wired up to our LC7i, and we'll be right back. And we're back. So I went ahead and wired up our amplifier rack. Now, I went above and beyond here and really made it nice and pretty for the customer. Obviously, you don't have to go this far in depth, but we'll review the connections here. So in case you want to still do something similar at home, that you're able to do so and you know where everything goes. You're going to need power and ground. We went ahead and got our ground connected here. This amplifier requires spade terminals. This wiring kit came with them, so we put those spade terminals on there. So that'll go nice and short. We'll show you where we're going to ground that. Power wire, we didn't cut it the length yet. It's nice and long. We're going to pull this all the way through into the engine bay. We'll show you how to do that here in a moment. Now with our amplifier, it also has speaker terminal outputs as well as a remote turn-on input. Now a remote turn-on input, you can either do it from the T-harness. Our Pac T harness here does have an accessory turn-on. So that's up to you if you use that, or if you use your line-out converter to turn it on for you. This, for example, has the GTO, generated turn-on circuitry in it, so as soon as it detects audio, it'll turn on and put power to our remote in. So the remote out to the remote input. That'll turn everything on for us. It's a really nice feature to have. Speaker wire outputs, that'll go up to back behind the radio here. It's all nice and zip-tied. I haven't put the ends on yet. We'll cover that here in a moment, but that'll go up to the radio. RCAs, this will come from our line-out converter here. Again, alternatively, if you don't use an LC7i, you can still use the high-level input and the harness that's included with your Kenwood or your amplifier and do a high-level input. That's up to you. This gives us a lot more signal correction and internal summing, and we have our AccuBass and bass restoration all built into this, which is a really nice feature to have. So the outputs of our LC7i go to the inputs of our amplifier. So we have these nice little shorty 18-inch 6 channels of RCAs, and we can link some of these in the description if you want some shorty ones. We have our sub output wire here. That'll go to the trunk. And finally, to get signal to our LC2i to feed all of this to make this work, on our LC2i, we have our inputs here. This is the input from the factory radio, where we're feeding input signal to this so it can do our correction, and output from the RCs to the amplifier. At a minimum, this LC2i needs power and ground. What we did is we actually created a nice custom loom of constant, accessory, and ground wire, all nice and twisted and loomed, which will actually run up to back behind the radio to the T-harness too. 2 sets of inputs here go through another set of 9 connector cable, and that'll also go up to the T-harness. And this will pull signal from the factory radio, feed it into this so it can nice and clean. Got everything zip tied, just like how we did the amplifier here. So the 3 sets of wire that's going up to the radio, we have our inputs to feed signal to everything here. We label that as input. We have power, ground, and accessory that'll tap into our T-harness, just to power our LC2i. Our speaker outputs from our amplifier. This will also go to the T-harness to feed all our speakers, the signal output from our 5-channel amp. So these 3 will run all the way up to back behind the radio. We still, like I mentioned before, still need to put all our ends on, and we'll show you how we're going to do that here in a moment. This end goes to the trunk for our subwoofer box. Ground, we're going to ground. We'll show you a grounding place. And then we got our power wire, which will go to the battery. So that is our amplifier rack. It's basically all done, so at this point in time, we can grab the whole thing, and we can go get it placed up underneath the seat and start pulling all these wire to the appropriate location. So next here, let's go ahead and talk about our T-harness. Now this harness by Pac is super convenient because it provides us a length of wire that we can modify to pull signal and return signal without cutting any of the factory wiring whatsoever. Now, this harness is unique just to this Hyundai. They make these harnesses for all different makes and models, which is really nice. And so we picked this one up because it fits this generation Kona. What we need to do is unplug the harnesses found in the factory radio and plug these ones in its place. And then those OEM harnesses we unplugged initially will go into the female end of our harness. And again, it provides this length of wire. What this now allows us to do is we have breakouts for constant 12 volt, accessory and ground here, our 4 sets of speaker wires here. Right now it's configured to just pass everything through. What we do is unhook these. Now if you're just doing an amp and sub, just a mono amp and sub, they actually provide one of these here too, so you can essentially still pass that speaker signal on through. This will go to your line out converter or your sub amp for signal. You pass everything else through, And perfect. It even provides these connections to power a line out converter if needed. So if you're just doing a mono amp, that would be your configuration. This will connect to your line out converter, and then you can send signal to your new amplifier without impacting the rest of the factory audio sound system. Now in our case, we're doing a 5-channel amp, so we're not going to need this harness. And instead, we have these breakout harnesses, and they are labeled. One end goes to the amp, so this will go to the input side, our 9-conductor cable input wiring. Then this end, output, and this will come from our amplifier, and this will send that signal, newly amplified signal from the Kenwood, and send it to all our door speakers from this harness. So this will reroute it to our equipment. This will bring it back in and send it to all our doors. Now this is the harness we're going to power our LC7i or whatever line out converter. Constant 12 volt. We have accessory and we have a ground here, which is really nice and convenient. So the wiring that we ran for that, it's ready to go. So we have quite a few ends to solder on here. Let's go ahead and prep our 9-conductor cable and get our ends soldered on. Alright, so we went ahead and attached our inputs and outputs. Now this end obviously goes through our line out converter, and then our female ends is the ends that are coming from the amplifier. What we've done is we soldered those on, we added some heat shrink both sides there. We're going to loom it with some high temperature test tape, just pretty it up, and then these ends will connect into our T-harness. Also did one for the power, ground, and accessory for our line out converter. That'll also plug in. So that's basically done here. We're going to reloom everything with some high temperature tested tape, add some more heat shrink, and then basically we can next turn our attention over to pulling out the radio so we can make our connections behind the radio. Alright, so here is our amplifier mount. It all fits in there super tight, but look how perfect that fits. Our LC7i fits there underneath the vent, so the vent vents over it, so it won't overheat the LC7i. Now we use this little spot here to feed all our wiring through. We have power and ground coming out this way in our subwoofer output. But for the most part, that's all our main connections out this way. And then our inputs, outputs, and our power for the LC7i go up and over. Fish it along the heater channel and just out here. And now we have these ends that'll plug into our T-harness once we fish these up into the dash. So we have to get the radio out, plug in our T-harness, make our connections, put the radio back in. Now at this point in time, we need to go ahead and pop the radio out temporarily so we can plug in our T-harness, and then we'll just basically put it right back in after we confirm it's working. It's a little bit of a chore to get the radio out. There's a couple of panels that need to come out, so we'll get started. First step is we need to remove basically the bezel that goes up and around the gauge cluster. It needs to temporarily just be popped out. A couple of ways to do it. You can start back here. We just need to give this a tug. Just kind of like that. I'm using this pry tool here, this vinyl panel tool. Okay. Woo! It's tight. Very tight. It's all just clips. All right. Ooh. Disconnect your hazard switch harness. Now, there's going to be 2 screws on the top. We'll get to that panel and screw in a minute, but there are screws here on the sides. Also one on this side. So on the side of this top panel, back behind the radio, there's going to be 2 places for like a flat screwdriver, a pick tool, panel tool, whatever you want. We just need to kind of get it started here. Now this panel is kind of a chore to get to. So that is a very difficult piece to unsnap. So we're going to pull it up here, and then you got to shift it off to the side. So there are 2 clips here. Once you get it up, you got to slide it out just like so. After these 2 clips, here's the 3 clips across the top, 2 tabs on the side, and these tabs too. So it's a tight little piece of plastic. Just like before, go ahead and remove the 2 screws here on the top on the side. First, the radio is just held in with clips. That's going to come down enough so we can fish our harnesses up in there, and we'll plug in our T-harness at the radio. Okay, so we got it all plugged in here. Got our T-harness into the radio. The other end is plugged into the harnesses here. And then we made our connections for our T-harness to the amplifier inputs, our outputs, and our power. So now we can tuck everything back in the dash. Alright, so we got our T-harness all connected. So it took some time to just push everything back up into the dash. There's plenty of space way up back in the dash. So just work your harnesses up and back so it doesn't get pinched when you push in the radio. So at this point, what we can do is go ahead and snap the radio back into place. Here underneath the hood, our battery is here on the driver's side. There's a grommet kind of there in the center. So we'll kind of look around and find the best potential area for us to pull our power wire through. But we need to pull that blue thick power wire through the firewall. We'll put an inline fuse in the area, and that's going to allow us to power our aftermarket amplifier off the current of the vehicle. Alright, so what we did here is we don't have the manual transmission, hence there's no clutch here. So that's a really nice empty space for us to actually drill and put our own grommet there. It's a 5/8 hole, and we use the grommet that was included with the kit. Now, if you don't want to do that, you can go through that main harness grommet there. But that was a nice blank and flat area, and we drilled that 5/8 hole with a unibit. Made it really nice and easy. Ran our wire down, and obviously that goes into the terminal of the amplifier. Underneath, comes out a nice big empty area there. We fished it up, ran our wire down. Now we're putting our fuse holder there. We built a little angled mount. There's not a lot of space up here for this big fuse holder, so we put that there so it's nice and snug. And then this will go up and go to this terminal post here. We don't want to go to the tightening post, but we want to go right here. This is directly off the post of the battery. There's no fuse, so that's a good opportunity for us to add our power wire. Now, we're not going to do that until we get our ground and everything sorted out, but at this point, we're going to pause here up underneath the hood and turn our attention over to getting our ground completed. Now, inside here, if we pull this on up, there is a nice bolt here. Now, it holds the assembly together for our gas door. But if we clean up the paint there, we can either put our ground there, we can tap and put a ground right here. It's nice and thick. It's up to you. There's no factory ground really on this crossbar, but you can certainly make one. It's thick enough, it's sturdy enough to hold the seat here. Alright, so we got our ground there with the nice 10mm bolt. Good to go. That'll just sit right up underneath the carpet there, but we clean off the paint super well, so it's totally bare metal. We ohmed it out. It's a nice ground. It'll be perfect for our amplifier here. So at this point of time, with our power wire run and our ground wire run, we can go ahead and hook up our power wire on the battery. With our ground now done, we went ahead and connected our positive wire to the positive post of the battery. Doing so is always a good idea. Let's remove the negative first. You make your connection, And then once that connection's all done, you can put the negative back on the battery for safety. Now additionally here we did some little trimming here of this little edges so this can shut without pinching the wire. So that shuts there. Fuse holder's all mounted there, everything nice and zip tied and bolted in. All right, so we got everything all in, got it all tuned and cleaned up here. Fits perfectly in that space. I mean, I can still get to all the terminals when the seat's rolled all the way forward, so that works out great. So at this point in time, we can go ahead and get the seat all back. We just went ahead and set our gains with an SMD DD1. And basically at this point in time, we're just finishing up this install. All right, here's the view with the seat rolled all the way forward. You can see all our connections there. And the nice thing is we can still get to all the dials on the amplifier with the seat in. So if we have to make any adjustments down the road, we can easily get to them right here. Went ahead and mounted our bass knob. Customer wanted it totally out of place. Now with these ACR ones, you can flush mount them, but again, they didn't want a hole or anything in the dash. And it was requested to put it right here in the center console. So we'll have to put all their stuff back in. But essentially here, they can make the adjustment and close that. It's nice and accessible, but out of the way. Here's our nice subwoofer box. Now it's down firing here. Here's a view of how it sits in there. It actually fits really nicely. Lines up really well with the seat. So you can still fold one seat down. Have this here. Now if needed, they can disconnect this up and totally remove it. But it's looking great. Alright, so we got everything done here. Everything's all cleaned up. Now if you want to see how we also did the front door speaker component set with the tweeter mid bass and the rear door coaxial, we'll link those videos down in the description, which walks you through how to replace those, what parts you'll need, everything like that. If you like any of the parts that we used in this video, we'll link them down in the description along with anything else that's recommended. Especially if you're looking to replace the radio, we can even link those parts for you as well. Thanks again for watching. If you liked what you saw, be sure to hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. It posts great content on the channel all the time. We will see you in the next video.